professor in the Department of Teaching of Learning at the School of Education and Human Development. She currently serves as the Director of International Initiatives for the T&L department, and Daniela Foerch is a clinical assistant professor and researcher of early childhood education in the College of Arts, Sciences and Education within the School of Education and Human Development at Florida International University. So, please, the word is yours.
Thank you, Roberta. And this is Flavia. Daniela is joining us shortly. She's having some issues with her internet, so uh, I will start. So our presentation is about enhancing global learning through online education abroad experiences. Um, so one of the first things that we wanted to show, and obviously that is a little bit before the pandemic, is that we wanted to make sure that higher education institutions continue promoting and promote global learning on our students. One way in order for us to do that, obviously, is study abroad. Study abroad is not the only way to do it, but certainly has been one of the tools mostly known. So for us, the idea is that a study abroad can also be used in online courses. So we thought that we can incorporate that international experience even if we are teaching fully online, like Daniela and I were doing. So what we are going to do is we're going to present now the paper that we did about how we included a 2 weeks study abroad experience in Trento, Italy, in our fully online course, which was related to early childhood education. I just wanted to share some of the statistics, and this, of course, relates to the United States in particular. So when we look at the 2020 Open Doors report, we know that there has been an increase of 1.6% of students going abroad. Still, the numbers are not as high, but at least we have seen an increase from the previous academic year. When we look at Florida in particular, which is the state where Danielle and I are, in the state of Florida, we have also seen an increase in the number of students participating abroad. Still, is not a large number since this is supposed to represent the public institutions here in the state of Florida. Another important data for us to look at is when we look at in terms of who are the students going abroad. So the Open Doors report showed that 68% of the students were Caucasians, 10.9% was Hispanic of the Latino American, 8.9 Asian, Pacific Islander, on 6.8% African American. I wanted to share that information because we at FIU, we're a public research university, and we have more than 57,000 students enrolled. We are number one in the nation in awarding bachelor's and master's degree to Hispanic students, which means that we are categorized as a Hispanic granted institution. So if you remember, the number of students from the Hispanic participating in a study abroad is relatively low. So for Daniela and I, that was something that we wanted to address when we started thinking about how to create and develop a study abroad type of program where we can have more students being engaged in. So FIU, as I said, is a university very avant-garde. We're trying to give our students in all different fields the skills that they're going to need to gain employment and in the future, and also to be able to match the skills that they're going to need for their labor demand. One of those skills which are very important for FIU is the soft skill of being globally competent. We want to make sure that our students understand that not only because they live, particularly in this case in Miami, and Miami tends to be considered a multicultural city, that they really have that global competency skills of what it means to be able to collaborate and act and understand and communicate and be solving problem thinkers beyond Miami. So a study abroad, it can be understood through different frameworks, and that's really captures the essence of what we wanted to do with Daniela. One is the global competency definition that it has been adopted by the OECD and the Center for Global Education, where really defines a study abroad as an experience that allows you to investigate the world beyond your immediate environment. So you're really looking at issues that go beyond your locality. You're looking at global and cultural significance. It allows you to recognize, understand, and appreciate perspectives or words of others, communicate ideas effectively, which is very important in this globalized world. And then another important aspect is once you have all that knowledge, to be able to take action in order to become an active and sustainable development individual. Global learning in itself does the philosophy, if you want, that FIU has adopted. Much of our learning is designed in order to promote global learning to all our students. And we define global learning as the process of diverse people collaboratively analyzing and addressing complex issues. So again, the notion is that all these different activities and learning activities, they have these frameworks behind what we do to promote global competency and global learning. So, I believe Daniela, yeah, this is yours.
So this education abroad program is a 6-week fully online program, and it's in early childhood education. So the first and the last 2 weeks are fully online, and then the weeks in the middle, week 3 and week 4, are Argentino, Italy, observing the Nido and preschool centers in 2 different settings. One is in Trento, the city, and the other setting is in Borgo, a more rural area. And so spend a week in Borgo and a week in Trento. And the students spend 6 hours a day observing and reflecting on their observations and philosophies. And then these are the research questions that guided this study. What is the global perspective of the students attending the study abroad? How does the study abroad experience contribute to the students' global competencies? And what are students' personal perceptions about the study abroad? The methodology that guided this study was a mixed methods design, and we collected qualitative and quantitative data. The quantitative data were the global perspective inventory, and which the data was analyzed using descriptive statistics on the GPI 6 scales with each dimension. And Flavia is going to talk a little bit more about this later on. And these Global Perspective Inventory and the Distributed Statistics addressed question number 1 and 2. And then we had 7 female students who answered the survey. And then for the qualitative part, the data collected was the FPSM observation guidelines, which is the Federazione Provinciale Scuole Materne Trento. And basically, these were reflections, daily reflections that the student did. And this data, the questions 2 and 3. A grounded theory approach design was used to investigate how the study abroad contributed to the students' global competence. The data was transcribed and entered into NVivo, and which is a qualitative software program. And the grounded theory design used for this study is a deductive one with the purpose of identifying the emerging themes. The students who participated in this data were 11 female students. And they were purposely selected because they were the students who registered and participated in the study abroad course in the summers of 2017 and 2018.
Okay, so Daniela went over the research questions, so I'm just going to read them quickly. And what is the global perspective profile of the students attending the study abroad? And we answered that through the global perspective inventory that we're going to discuss that. I think I'm going backwards. Yes. Was I?
You're doing the global perspective inventory, yes.
Yes, here we go. Sorry, I was moving the other way around. My apologies. Okay, so as I said, we use the global perspective inventory because this is a tool that it would allow us to assess the students' global learning and perspective. It is a tool that is allow us to look at the holistic approach for the students in 3 different domains. So it allows us to look at the cognitive dimension, basically, how do I know? Then we look at the intrapersonal domain, who am I? And the interpersonal dimension, how do I relate to others? Again, the reason that we decided to do this is because if you go back to the definitions of global learning and having global competency, much of those definitions, it really involves these 3 different dimensions. It means it's about knowledge, really having that clear ability to understand critical conflict and knowing where cultural contexts take place, the ability to know yourself and your perspectives and how one's own ethnicity and race relates to your identity, and then how do you relate to others. So if you look at the GPI, it allows us to look that kind of like in-depth analysis, because each of these dimensions have 2 different subscales. So we have the knowledge for the cognitive and the knowing. We have the intrapersonal dimension. You look at the intrapersonal affect and the intrapersonal identity. And for the interpersonal dimension, you're going to be looking at social responsibility dimension and the social interaction. So Daniela gave you some preliminary about who were our students, and you can say, you can know that 100% of our participants, is important, they never participated in a study abroad before. So for us, that was very important, because these were mostly teachers, and for teachers to be able to have that experience, to develop that global competency, to be aware of what the global learning is. Our goal is that eventually they're going to bring that back into the classroom. So we want to make sure that this has a direct impact, hopefully, on their teaching praxis. So this is just a preliminary, preliminary in the sense that it's a short version. What we did is we did just descriptive statistics on the result for our students, and you can see that we only have 2017 and 2018. Um, we did not run one last year. So hopefully we will be able to resume our study abroad again once COVID um, is allow us to do that. So the scale was measured in a 5 Likert scale, where 1 is strongly agree with the statements that each of these scale sections had, and 5 is strongly disagree. So what this means is that the lower the mean scores that we see here, the group is considered to have a more global perspective. So our students showed a tendency to strongly agree with the statements on each of the scales depicting the global perspective. For the cognitive domain, we are looking again at a student's knowledge and understandings of what is true and important for them to know, as well as the complexity in taking other cultural perspectives. And the subscales of cognitive knowing shows a neutral perspective. The cognitive knowing domain implies that the influence of one's own culture in judging what is relevant to know and how to value things. So we found that to be relevant because that gives us an indication. It is not showing causation because we did not look for that, but it gives us like an introduction perhaps, or where the students were kind of like ambivalent on whether they were able to see that their own culture, they were using their own culture to judge relevant things that I need to know and how value things. The intrapersonal domain reflects the student's sound sense of self-direction and the purpose in one's lives. So we can see that both scales, they really are closer to 1 and 2, which means that they strongly agree with the statements. And the students show a tendency to know themselves in terms of the purpose of their life, which is their intrapersonal identity, and the level of acceptance and recognition of others' cultural perspectives. Finally, we looked at the interpersonal domain, and we see that the students reported a willingness to interact with persons with different social norms and cultural backgrounds, acceptance of others, and being comfortable when relating to others. In both subscales, we see that both classes reported a tendency uh, to reinforce social interaction. And we see it through items, questions, like, for example, I see myself as a global citizen with a mean score of 1.25, and I often get out of my comfort zone to better understand others. So that had a mean score of 2. So as I said, this GPI, we're not looking for causation, but we're looking at being able to understand what is the global perspective inventory of our students. Where are they in terms of that characteristics. So the brief summary is when we look at the GPI result and how do I know, which is a cognitive. Again, we know that the participants report a high level of awareness toward the importance of cultural content when making decisions. Knowledge dimension, the students reported a high level of awareness in cultures and current issues. And we have seen that overall, the students, they did have a high level of awareness, meaning who they are. So they have that knowledge and the high openness towards acceptance of others, which in our case, that was significant. Again, if you are teaching and you want to create an inclusive classroom, you need to know who you are and you need to be able to identify if you're bringing any biases or not. And then how do I relate to others? The students, again, reported high level of concern for others and a high level of interaction with other cultures and cultural sensitivity.
Okay, sorry, 1 minute left.
Yes, and we're gonna not show this, so Daniela, you can go ahead and just discuss the qualitative findings. I think I lost Daniela. So we did the qualitative data analysis and Daniela was the expert of that. So I'm just going to go over very quickly on what are the findings for that she got. So we did key conceptual categories emerge when we did the qualitative analysis. Basically, they were based the socio-cognitive philosophy, classroom and time management, social awareness, development of compassion, and community building. So when we look at the GPI and the reflections, how does a study abroad experience contribute to a student's global competencies? We know that demonstrated that the students who participated in a study abroad appeared to be more flexible and become more critical thinkers and compassionate, particularly towards children and adults. And that's because of the social awareness and the key mean score that we were able to associate. And when we look at the significance of the study, we know that the inclusion of a study abroad experience in an online class for us is significant because we want to put emphasis on global learning. We want to expand the existing literature on the study abroad by making sure that we provide a new different program design and that we really expand and make study abroad accessible to all our students, even our online students. And pretty much this is it. So I don't know if anyone has.
Thank you, girls, for your presentation. If there are questions, just please switch on your camera or type on the chat.
So if anybody has any questions that they want to email me or Daniela, you have our emails there. So please feel free to reach out to us and we'll be able to give you more details. I know that we have time constraints, so feel free to reach out to us.
Okay, so thank you very much for your presentation, and I was almost saying the same thing. So if you have questions or doubts and you want to contact Flavia or Daniela, email them. Here on the last slide, you can see the both emails. And now, due to time reason, I have to introduce Solmas, the next presenter. I will now upload the presentation. Solmas. Okay, now, Solmas, you are the